Broadcasting from the studios of WKEN, where every day is the weekend. It's the Ken Calvert Show with your host, Ken Calvert. And if you have anything nice to say about him, keep it to yourself. And now, here's Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody. It's Ken Calvert, and welcome to the...
We'll just keep talking.
Yeah, the cozy studios of WKEN, where every day it's the weekend. And that's been an old joke, and I suspect the listeners get tired of hearing it. But Mark Ridley is my guest. Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle. Mark Ridley, pioneer, true pioneer, and we're going to get to that in a second. At your club on Sunday night, if you listen to this before this coming Sunday, which will be October
14th.
October 14th.
Yeah.
SNL.
Yeah, that's the ticket.
Yeah, Morgan Fairchild.
Morgan Fairchild.
Yeah, that's the ticket. He was not a stand-up comedian until 2003.
Right.
We were just talking about this.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. I just assumed he came from comedy to SNL.
No, he studied at the Groundlings. He grew up in California, and he studied at the Groundlings, which is a wonderful improv, like Second City, the Upright Citizens Brigade. And then, of course, Saturday Night Live, and then his acting career took off for a while, League of Their Own, quite a few films.
Right.
But he's, you kind of have to reinvent yourself as time goes by. He actually he owned the comedy club in California, John Lovitz's Comedy Club at Universal City.
He owns a comedy club.
Yeah, I don't know if it's still in business. I have to check, but it's inside the grounds of Universal City. So,
but that's a good place to be.
Yeah. So I guess, John is not, I think I'm older than him. And I think pretty sure like by about 7 or 8 years.
I interviewed him back in 1996, 97 at WJR.
Yeah.
And it's always great when you're doing a podcast and you get that little click.
Yeah, I put my phone on silent, Ken.
I know. Well, that's right. Of course you would. And so, because like I said, you're a seasoned pro. I'm not.
No, it's from owning a club for almost 40 years. Turn off your damn phones.
That's right. That's right. We'd like to ask everyone to please put their phone on silent at this time or turn them off.
Or you'll be ejected.
Or you will be thrown out of the club. Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle, and I'm going to guess location number 5.
Let's see if go ahead.
All right, I'm going to go Meeting Place.
Right.
Red Cedars on Telegraph.
Wrong.
Where was it?
Okay, it went right down to Friday's Old World Cafe because the Meeting Place was 90 seats, and they came to me from Friday's and said, we have over 200 seats here. And then I was there at the height, right when Make Me Laugh was starting to take off. So
That's where I'm going next. So let's bring that up after this.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'll tell you about some of the calendars I still have going back to that date.
Okay.
So from there, I got in a big fight, literally a fist fight with the owner of the place.
Okay.
Then moved down to Stafford's at 15 in Orchard Lake. And then actually over to Lafferty's, which became Jukebox. Then Red Cedars.
Oh.
Then Northwood Inn. And then at this current location for 28 years. I felt like I was in a witness protection program for a long time.
So that's how you launder money, right?
That's exactly. Just move around.
And eventually it goes to the Ozarks.
Either that or buy a 300-seat motorhome and do shows at people's house.
You have to watch Netflix to get my joke on the Ozarks.
Yeah.
But all right. But the starting point was the Meeting Place downstairs.
Yeah.
Bruce Cameron, local entrepreneur, restaurateur, had 2 buildings. He had the Meeting Place and another place called the Midtown Cafe.
And all the Maple House restaurants.
Restaurants. Yeah. Now, if you're not from Southeast Lower Michigan, that doesn't really make any sense, nor does it really matter. But this was the starting place. What I don't think you'll remember was the fact that I actually worked at the Meeting Place, coincidentally, because I met Bruce while working at a Kroger grocery store.
Right.
And his Maple House was about 5 doors down from the Kroger. I'd have my lunch and coffee there.
Yeah.
He offered me a job as a host at the Meeting Place downstairs.
Right.
Seating people for your first club, the Comedy Club.
Right.
And all of the comics that you brought in, you would always introduce them, were from what Binder refers to as a strip show, meaning 5 shows in 1 week.
Yeah.
And it was called Make Me Laugh.
Right.
Here's my question. How did you go from being a fan of Make Me Laugh to, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a room, and I'm going to bring these guys from Make Me Laugh in and do comedy.
Didn't even know about Make Me Laugh before I started the club.
You didn't?
No.
Oh.
And actually, I worked for Bruce back in 1970. I was a waiter upstairs at the meeting place. So I was 20 years old at the time. So that's how I knew him.
Okay.
And after I graduated from Wayne State, because I crammed 4 years into 9 there, and I was a very old graduate. I had a year-old son by the time I graduated. So anyway, I went out to Los Angeles to try and get in their film directors program at USC. And I didn't get in, but I kind of hung around L.A. for about a month, stayed with my ex-sister-in-law and brother-in-law, and would go to the Improv and the Comedy Store, which were fairly new out there. So I got to see Pryor, Robin Williams. David Letterman had just moved out there.
Yep.
So I got to see that class coming through there. And then when I couldn't make any headway at the film school, came back to Detroit and kind of knocked around as a waiter at Victoria Station. And I said, damn, boy, it would be great to have a comedy club in Metro Detroit. So I went around and talked to a couple of different restaurateurs, went back to Bruce, and we were going to do it at the Midtown Cafe, but the city of Birmingham said, no, that's a cabaret license. And with a cabaret license, if you don't do well at comedy, you can bring in strippers. So we had to call an audible in the 11th hour and move out to the meeting place. And 90 seats. But it took off like a rocket. Immediately was a hit.
It was.
We were only open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
It was really a cool room.
Yeah.
It had sort of a Mad Men Vegas feel to it.
Yeah.
With square sofa cushions.
Low ceiling.
Couple of tables. Small bartender.
Yep.
Yeah, I really loved that.
And
place.
it was basically like open mic night every night because I only had like 8 or 9 local comedians until Mike Binder contacted me and said, Mark, I really want to come in and play it. I know we can do well. I'm from that area. And of course, Bert, his dad, told everybody about it.
Sure.
Bob Talbert did a big column.
I remember that.
And we didn't take reservations or sell tickets. So I had a couple, 300 people waiting outside to get into this little tiny room downstairs on a rainy February night. So a month after I opened, I said, wow, we're really onto something
So
here.
your audience was basically driven by, they knew the names from Make Me Laugh.
No, Make Me Laugh hadn't even started yet.
Oh, excuse me.
I stayed there because that's when Dave Coulier started coming in.
How did
at
people
19.
know about these comics?
Well, back then it was Bob Talbert, Dick Purton, and J.P. McCarthy would have me on talking about it.
No kidding.
And Dick, being a fan of comedy,
Yeah.
we did a couple of interviews and people just sort of, then the ball started rolling. And there was nothing like it. Ken, you got to figure, I was probably the 8th or 9th comedy club in the country.
That's what I mean. When I say pioneer, you can't argue that.
Yeah, and
you are one of the true pioneers.
After Mike Binder headlined there, I said, my God, we're really into something big. And that's when I decided to go down to the next biggest place and Make Me Laugh. Mike went back and told Gary Shandling, Bob Saget, Dave. Dave knew about it. So Make Me Laugh was just kicking off, on Channel 50, 5 nights a week. Remember, on UHF.
Yep.
And so I was getting these guys for like $500 a weekend.
Yeah.
Shanley, I think I paid $400 to for the first time coming in, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Yeah.
And I think his airfare was more than his actual fee.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was just producing the shows. I had no liquor revenue or anything. I was the producer. So
what does that mean?
I took an empty room and told the guy, look, I can fill this place up 3 nights a week. If you can keep the booze and the food, I'll just take the door.
Oh.
And so I'm the producer.
All right.
So they went back and said, good room in Detroit. Then there's one opening in Cleveland. We can do the circuit. So it was, Shandling, Vic Dunlop, Bruce Babyman Baum.
Absolutely.
Kip Adada. They all started coming through.
Yes.
So you'd see them on Make Me Laugh, and I'd be getting plugs nationally from them. And then they do my place, and then they would do the Cleveland Comedy Club with Dino Vince. And,
and either Dave or I think it was Mike Binder. See, this is the trilogy. This is the summary, if you will, for this particular comedy capsule, because Tim Allen and then Dave Coulier and last week Mike Binder all mentioned you, all mentioned the stories, all remembered the meeting place.
Yeah.
And then they all brought up Dino, who saw your club, said, I like it, took it to Cleveland,
right.
And then somebody took it, then maybe he took it to Pittsburgh as well.
No, that was another guy altogether.
Yeah.
But the word got out fast because...
As Binder said, the guy that always said, Mike, is it fair?
Is it fair?
Is it fair?
I could tell those. I could tell. Listen, I never complained that I did not take a salary for 1 year at one point. 1 year I had to have a day job and keep the club going at night. So, yeah, there were a lot of times I didn't feel like it was fair, but I loved it so much I would keep it going.
But the comedians were saying to each other, did you get the speech in Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Is it fair, Tim? Is it fair that you're making...
$3,000 and
you're making $2,500 and
Yeah.
I'm making $800.
Yeah.
Is it fair?
It is fair.
Yeah.
Because what people don't realize is that your comedy is an art.
Yeah.
And you're putting that art form up on stage. So if you're making $800 or $1,000 and they're making $10,000 or $15,000, man, be happy.
Right.
I mean, and it keeps going every week, year after year for 40 years.
It's the radio in me that makes me want to constantly refresh so that, like, new listeners coming in, that doesn't happen on a podcast. But Mike Binder, Tim Allen, Dave Coulier, and now the genesis for me, Mark Ridley. You and I got together years ago, and I don't remember JP, but I certainly remember that Dick Purton would always have a comic on.
Yeah.
I fell in love with comedy.
Yeah.
I went to and was a regular at least 4 of them.
Oh, yeah.
And to this day, I mean, still, it was such a great way for me to marry radio with what I liked as well.
Oh, it's perfect.
And it got listeners.
Yeah.
So that what we had going on, especially at WRIF, every Thursday morning, the red eye would come in, you'd pick them up at the airport, and you'd bring them right over to the radio station.
Yeah.
And again, it was Gary Shandling. It was Drew Carey. It was Jim Carrey. I remember he was the strangest guy I've ever been around in my life because apparently he hated to fly. Wasn't that the deal with him?
I don't know about
Well, he
that.
was, but he was. I remember he came in. He didn't even want a chair. He just sat in the corner.
Yeah.
And I said, folks, unfortunately, you've got to see him, not necessarily hear him, because he was so animated facially.
Well, he came down to Lafferty's. He was coming from Toronto, outside of Toronto, on his way to Los Angeles back in the early 80s. So he basically did open mic night for me. And then he'd stand up there with those strange faces, do Bruce Dern and Clint Eastwood and all these different...
Jack Nicholson.
Man, he was just great.
Yeah.
And then I didn't hear from him for years. And then all of a sudden I get a call from his agent, or his manager actually. It was Dennis Miller's brother.
Jimmy Miller.
Jimmy, and then there was... it's got a third brother. I'm drawing a blank on it. But anyway, he traveled with him. And so Living Color was hot, and this is in the early 90s, so he came to the club a couple of times then.
Yeah, that's when we had him on.
And then my oldest son, who's 42 now, it was his 16th birthday, and he said, Dad, I have a big favor to ask. Can I get a few of my friends and go see Jim Carrey? I said, sure. It's your 16th birthday. You're a man.
Yeah.
So I take him in the back room after the show's over, and Jim goes, oh, Ryan, good to meet you. What's your birthday? He said, you want to go back to my hotel room and watch some porn and get some hookers? and Ryan just standing there going, yeah, sure, why not? And so that's what led him into the show business. A bug. Gave him the bug today. So
yeah, we're going to talk about Rick and Morty in a little bit because he's a very important part of that very successful season 4, I believe now, right?
He's no longer with the show. I can tell you why. So
okay, well, maybe that's a separate podcast.
It's actually a good thing for him.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah.
Good. So, getting back to all of these comics, you were, the starting. Well, not necessarily the starting point, but they're the starting point here locally in Detroit.
Right.
People were seeing Shandling for the very first time ever.
Sure, yeah.
They were seeing Drew Carey for the very first time ever.
Kevin James.
Yeah. And God, I had so many favorites. I mean,
Ellen DeGeneres.
Now,
Rosie
I wanted
O'Donnell.
to talk to you about Ellen DeGeneres because Ellen and I don't think people will believe this, but maybe you'll verify it for me, we were very good friends. Ellen really liked doing the show.
Yeah.
And I remember she had some issues with some sort of a stalker.
We talked for an hour and a half in my car one night.
I'll never forget that we did a show downtown. There was a boat that was docked right on the river.
Right.
And we were doing a show, and she didn't leave my side.
Right.
She was like, because she was in an open space, and she thought for sure within the crowd, because we were doing a live broadcast, that she was afraid this person was going to show up.
There's been a lot of those. I've had quite a few of those throughout the 40 years.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
But she was a delight to be around.
Yep.
So incredibly funny.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed. But I mean, she and I honestly felt, I mean, I'm not talking any sort of, chemistry.
Right.
I'm just talking about,
Right.
I think she trusted me. She liked me. And I'll never forget that day on that boat, her just saying, stay right here.
Yeah.
Stay by my side the whole time. I said, not a problem.
Yeah, she told me the whole story. I took her back to the hotel, and I said, okay, good night. She goes, can I talk to you about what's going on with me? And all right. An hour and a half we sat in that car and talked.
No kidding.
And she just laid it all out, how she was deathly afraid, had to buy a new house under through a shell company that her attorney started.
No kidding.
And this person was going through her garbage, and it was everywhere. So I mean, and that's happened more than once throughout the 40 years I've been in business.
Jeez.
Where guys have to check in. Do not give my real name. I'm checking in under this name, and only you pick me up, Mark.
Really?
I don't want anybody else. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
There's been some frightening. Not a lot, but enough that I could see the fear in their eyes.
Yeah. Well, Ellen was a great one, though. Great.
Yeah.
To this day, I forget, there was one guy that really pushed back on us, who walked off on us, and this was when I was doing the Ken and Lynn show.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was Brad Garrett, but it was similar to somebody like Brad Garrett, who came in and just kind of went off the rails, and it was live radio.
Yeah.
And
Bill Maher?
I don't know if it was Maher or not, but he said, I didn't know that I was doing a effing country club. I thought I was doing a rock and roll morning show.
Oh, man.
And that was it.
Yeah.
I mean, we said, you're done, man.
Yeah.
You're done.
I've had a few of those, too, and that makes for a very long ride back to the hotel.
Yeah.
And I just sit there and you go, you don't know how many tickets you just lost. If you were working off the gate, you'd be broke right now.
Right.
And I used to hate that. It just, how they treated it.
For young comics, because a lot of young comics are going to listen to this.
Right.
Explain to them the difference between the gate and the guarantee.
Well, a guarantee, I mean, that's something I set up ahead of time. And
Yeah.
it's usually for somebody who's on their way up, the comedy ladder. If it's a big name, somebody who's really well established and doesn't really do comedy clubs, or, they're part of if they're coming back from another city and they want to do one night at my place, or if it's somebody who's got a proven record, then I do a guarantee versus a percentage of the gate.
So Kathleen Madigan, who's coming up in November, will get a guarantee.
She gets a percentage of the gate.
Oh, she does?
She sells out every time. So it's always much greater.
So, is it better to take the gate if you know you're just going to sell it up?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm very, very fair. I mean, I've always asked Kathleen, I said, look, if you don't want to do the club next year, let me know. I understand, because if you look at her website, I'm the only comedy club on there.
Yes.
Twice a year she comes in.
Yeah.
And she goes, no, Mark, you don't understand. When I come in, this is my vacation.
And you did a sold-out Royal Oak Theater show,
Yeah.
and that's, what's that, 5,000? Or 4,000, 3,000?
No, we did 2 shows in one night. I think it was 3,000. We held about 1,500 each show.
Yeah, and who opens but Louis Black?
Yeah,
it's kind of like, that's...
Well, 3 years ago at her birthday party, I was the only club owner invited out to her birthday party in Las Vegas.
Is that right?
Ron White was headlining at the Mirage, so she said...
Did Ron White ever do the comedy?
Oh, God, I have Ron White stories for you. I've had all of the, except for Larry the Cable Guy. I had Jeff, Bill Engvall,
Sure.
Jeff Foxworthy, and then Ron.
Engvall and I, that's where we became great friends.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ron, and he remembers
And
this.
Foxworthy. I got a picture of Foxworthy right behind you, but you don't want to look now because you'll go off mic.
I remember Ron, having to pick him up in the morning and go, whoa, I got a little contact buzz off of that. So, but there was a time when he was living in Mexico, so I'd have to dial like 03 and then like this long number to get a hold of him, to get him up here to the Michigan. But so he was headlining at the Mirage, and that's when he decided to have Kathleen's birthday party. So I'm there with Ron, Lewis, Kathleen, let's see, who else was it? Tammy Pescatelli, Carrot Top. This is a great Louis Anderson, which I'll talk about in a moment.
Yeah.
But we played golf for 2 days, and it was just a magnificent birthday party, and it was a roast too. We got to have to say something about Kathleen.
Is that right?
And then she stood up and roasted all of us.
Yeah, I bet you did. Oh boy, and it was only you guys in that room, or
12 of us,
that was it.
That was it. 12 people. It was like the Last Supper.
You're kidding me.
No, it was in fact,
Why didn't you sell tickets or somebody?
Kathleen says,
why didn't
there's
yeah.
only one club owner here, and Lewis goes, because the rest of them are too fucking cheap to buy a ticket.
Why didn't Jeffrey Ross say, listen, I'll bring the cameras, just let me sit there. I'll jump up once in a while.
You know, it was just it was a very nice private family affair is what it was. You know, and that's, you know, these are just good friends.
So Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle. So many of the people. Your wall has probably got 200.
Oh, yeah, with more to go.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot more that I have to put up yet.
Wow. Just amazing.
Yeah. It's
just
a lot
amazing.
Of fun.
So the obligatory, your worst experience with a comic, the one that you won't have back.
Well,
maybe
those people I won't mention. Because,
yeah, that's a good
I'm
point.
still in business. And I want to stay in business.
Yeah.
I've had problems where I've had to. Well, I'll give you a good example. Rosie O'Donnell had just won Star Search, and she came into headline. This was her second time headlining. First time was at the Red Cedars, then down at the Northwood Inn. And her warm-up act was Tim Allen. He was featuring.
Yeah.
So she came to me and she goes, Mark, as you can see, I can't follow this guy. Can we flip? And I said, absolutely. She goes, I'll take a pay cut. And I go, no, you came in a headline. I'm going to headliner's money. And I gave a little more to Tim and flipped him, and he closed the show. And she said, I'll never forget this. And sure enough, she put it in her book years later.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was. She goes, he could have cut my pay in half and had me do 20 minutes, but he was gracious enough to finish the week out with me. But I've had other name acts who can't follow a strong feature from Detroit,
right?
And I'll have to flip them like that, and I'll still pay them, but and one has gone on to be very, very. Maria Bamford talks about it. She played my club years ago, had to follow Mike Green, and I told her, I said, Maria, it's just not working.
Yeah,
I'm going to pay you.
Greeny's good.
Yeah, and now Maria is one of the biggest names in comedy.
Sure.
But I think her style. Mitch Hedberg, the same thing.
Yeah.
His style wasn't for the Detroit crowd at that time.
I never saw Hedberg at your place.
He was a feature act. He was great.
I so regret that.
Yeah.
Did you have, how many times have you had Billy Burr?
Twice.
Only twice?
Twice, yeah.
And has that been recent, or was that
no.
back in the day?
Last time was back in the day, 15, 16
so
years ago.
that would be impossible to get now.
Oh, yeah.
Because he'll do
you see
the
him just play
LCA.
he did the Forum just recently. It was sold out, so it's crazy.
He does an incredible podcast.
Yeah.
He does an incredible podcast. But so Billy Burr is one of my all-time favorites.
Yep.
I remember one night with Bill Sheft, who went on to be a writer for the David Letterman show.
Sure.
I'll never forget, there was a night, and he did a real cerebral style of comedy.
Right.
But I loved it.
Right.
And a lot of people really did like him. And he was great on radio because he would actually co-host.
Yeah.
And he knew what the hell he was doing around a microphone and asking questions, especially sports. He loved sports.
Sports and cigars.
And I'll never forget, somebody threw a salt shaker at him at your place from the right side, his left.
Yeah.
Stopped the show, and he said, Mark, find him.
Yeah.
Get him out of here.
Yeah.
And I thought, that was the first time I've ever seen tension in a room.
Yeah.
So the segue here then is, you've got to see people dying on the vine, and it's got to be pretty tough.
It's tough. It doesn't happen as much now as it used to, and you have to know your crowd, Ken. I mean, obviously I'm always trying to stay ahead of the curve. I'm bringing in people that you haven't heard of yet, maybe, but they're really big in the millennial segment of the population, like Mark Norman and Joe List and Kyle Kinane. These are people that are really big among the 30 and early 40-somethings. And then I'll do the oldies but goodies, as I call them, like John Heffron. And, is not considered an oldie but goodie.
Oh, come on.
No,
but
Kathleen Madigan. There are different demographics.
Okay, I get that.
No, but you have to know.
Yeah, but how come comics can't be like rock and roll? Like second and third generation fans.
Well, you really would. You wish that would happen,
but it doesn't.
But remember that there was a whole phase of what they call alternative comedy, comedy, which is basically somebody standing on stage talking about a sad part of their life with a minor punchline.
I didn't like
those. There's a great.
I do
there's
remember
a
this
great comment now by Sam Morrell, who I have coming out, who's going to be a big star. You watch this guy. I have come in at the club. His second time, and he said the new alt comedy are actually jokes with punchlines. So it's just like, it was perfect.
It both, actually all three. Tim especially Mike. Mike did such a beautiful job
Yeah.
of summarizing what's going on in comedy right now and what he's doing with comedy right now.
Yeah.
And I said that I thought comedy was kind of going through a renaissance with the older players. A lot of the guys that had walked away from their stand-up
Right.
have walked back into
Yeah.
stand-up. And Jay Leno told Mike Binder, Binder, never lose your act.
Never lose your act.
Never
right.
lose your act.
Right, right.
And he said what Tim has done so well is that he had such great material that he can get it back rather quickly.
Right.
And then he can amend to what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Coulier, known for just being super clean.
Absolutely.
Can a clean comic survive?
Yeah.
You bet. Look at Brian Regan.
Oh, absolutely. Jim Gaffigan.
Look at Jim Gaffigan.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they flourish because it's such a safe show to go see.
Absolutely.
And I totally
Absolutely.
buy into that. So getting back to the fact that you've seen some people die, some horrible deaths
Oh, yes.
on stage.
Yeah, it's happened, yeah.
Have you had
Yeah.
people ask for their money back?
Absolutely.
Really?
Oh, yeah. But
What do you do?
we have a very smooth way of doing it. Look, it's a no refund policy. We sell through a third-party ticketing system, so there's no refunds.
Right.
And so, but we're more than happy to give you passes. I mean, let's face it, comedy is subjective.
Sure it is.
So if you have 100 people in there, I guarantee you're going to have maybe 5 to 10 that are not going to like the show, no matter what. And that's not to say that happens every single week, but on any given week, there might be 5 to 10 people who don't like it.
Really?
My Facebook
That
and-
often?
yeah, because they're expecting something else, and we certainly do enough on our website, a little preview with the YouTube video, a little this, little, they can call the club. Is it an R-rated show? Is it PG-13? We don't have X-rated shows. I'm not to that desperate of a point yet, but, we'll give them passes to a future show, which I think just makes up for it. And 9 times out of 10, people will write something on our website or on a review saying, the management was gracious enough to give us passes to a future show.
Oh, cool.
So we're not saying, hey, we're in business to give you passes to future shows if you don't like it. But if you come out halfway through a show or the third of the way into the show and you just don't like it, okay, fine. If you sit there and eat the whole meal and want your money back, you're not going to get your money back, and you're not going to get a free pass.
Absolutely.
So,
right. Yeah.
you sat through the whole thing, pal.
That's right. Well, then why did you have 3 beers?
Yeah,
I mean, if you hated it that much, the guy's going to say, because I needed 3 beers to make me laugh.
You pay to go down to watch the Lions or the Tigers and sat through the whole game. All right, I didn't like it.
I want
my money
back. Yeah, absolutely. Well, what about hecklers then? Let's go to hecklers.
Hecklers are not really the problem that they were a long time ago, because I think a lot of people are getting smart to the fact that, look, I cannot compete with a guy who's on stage, under lights, with a microphone.
Right.
And who has more stage experience than I'll ever have in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, we don't overserve. I mean, there are clubs that kind of we have to really monitor how much people drink.
Yeah,
we've been so far to the point as not to let people in because they look like they're overly intoxicated
before they get there.
Oh, before they
second
go to the show.
Yeah.
It could be the first show. There's some pretty heavy drunks out there.
That's what I'm told. Yeah,
but anyway. So they have to sign a group letter. There's all kinds of things that you may not like jumping through these hoops, but you're one person.
Wait a minute. This is new to me.
What's
group letter. What does that mean?
Well, let's say it's a bachelorette party or a birthday party. Anything more than a party of 6 or 8, you have to sign a letter that you're responsible for the behavior of your crowd, because you're a party out for the evening. You're having a great time.
Yeah, no, I just got 10 seats.
Yeah. And you're only 10 people out of
Kathleen
400.
Madigan. You're telling me that I'm going to have to sign this form.
You're damn right.
All right, I thought so. Well, I'd hope to.
Yeah.
Because I plan on heckling Kathleen.
Well, then you plan on leaving right away.
I could say, hey, Kathleen, remember when I was on radio?
Remember who I used to be?
Yeah, right.
Well,
remember who I think I am?
You haven't seen my latest showroom manager, Bill, who is a power lifter, works at the DIA. He's about 6'3".
Okay.
He just smiles at you, but behind those eyes, he could pick you up and toss you out the door.
Okay. That's it. Well, Mark, I got to tell you, that was a good move on your part.
He can walk and talk you very nicely.
He can also throw you very, very far.
Yes.
Very, very far.
Yeah.
Well, I remember, like I said, with the Bill Sheft, a guy actually threw something I thought that was totally uncalled for.
Yeah.
I remember a couple of great comeback lines. One I remember, and I don't know who delivered it, somebody just kept interrupting.
Yeah.
And I think the guy said, look, and it was a woman that was heckling the guy.
Right.
And he said, look, I don't jump on the bed when you're working.
Right.
And I thought that was just a great line.
There are some great ones.
It took a couple of minutes, not a couple of minutes, rather, just a couple of seconds to sink in.
Well, back when I was emceeing, there was a guy.
You did a great job as an MC.
I had the
always
same
thought.
6 minutes all the time,
Yeah,
but
well,
I mixed it up.
Yeah, I know.
There was a guy.
You moved the OCC joke to the front on occasion.
and the air traffic controller to the back. Oh yeah. In fact, Jack Aronson, God bless him, he's the former owner of Garden Fresh Salsa.
Yeah.
To this day, he still comes in. I fly back once a year. I live in Florida during the winter, but I fly back for this big event for the it's Comedy for a Cause for Salvation Army, and Jack was one of the sponsors for the comedians I bring in. And he said, only if you MC and you do your OCC joke. I said, all right, you got it, pal. I'll be there. But a guy actually, I said something to him.
Now you have to tell people the OCC joke.
Well, anybody here ever go to OCC? And a few people raised. I said it's nothing more than a college with ashtrays. That's it. Silly. But anyway,
that's where I got my broadcasting career.
Well,
at WORB, Orchard Ridge Broadcasting.
You only went to one junior college? I went to two.
No, I went to Aquinas College for one semester because they had a radio station.
Yeah.
And I auditioned for the station, and the guy said, do the industry a favor and never get into it. Not do radio. He said the industry. I thought about 10 years later, boy, I'd like to compare paychecks with that cat.
Don't even try to repair a television on radio.
And then I worked with my partner. If you took 12 hours, they had to give you 2 hours a week on the air.
Yeah.
But we were so overloaded because everybody was listening to FM radio at the time.
Right.
That they partnered us up.
Yeah.
So I worked with this woman named Randy Stember.
Okay.
Who became Randy Thomas, who is now the voice of the Academy Awards.
Wow.
The Tonys, Entertainment Tonight. It's like, the Academy Awards are brought to you by, accepting on behalf of Mark Ridley is Ken Calvert.
Yeah.
This is Mark's first nomination,
Yeah, definitely.
And so I got in touch with her a few years back, and she's doing just fine.
That's great.
And she's the one that encouraged the guy at W4 to sign me. So she basically started my career.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's fascinating. We had so many great times. Mark Ridley, Ken Calvert, doing radio with Lynn Woodison, and of course I had other partners as well that I don't necessarily have to name.
No, you don't.
I suppose
we know between you and I. It's our secret.
We certainly do know that. But you were saying that Dick Burton, of course, another iconic radio broadcasting hero of mine. He was always interesting because sometimes the comics would be coming from Burton's show to our show.
Right.
Or going from our show to Burton's show.
Right.
And and no disrespect to Dick, but the one thing that a lot of comedians would say, I like doing your show because Dick wants to see exactly what he would write up. He wanted to see my set list.
Right, exactly.
He wanted to see my set list for radio.
It was the Johnny Carson approach.
And I'm so pissed off at radio now because they've totally destroyed that element as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
In terms of basically letting a comic just come in and be a co-host or whatever. It's always...
You could ask Richard Jenny, Rich, how you doing? And 30 minutes later, you're rolling on the floor.
And he was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Became a dear, dear friend.
Right.
And that was a day that will forever... I mean, they talk about, landing on the moon. They talk about Kennedy, and they talk about 9/11. I'll never forget the day that I heard about Rich Jenny.
Yeah.
I know. To this day, it's still just... it makes me mad. I'm still mad at Rich Jenny.
I was in the lobby of the Gotham Comedy Club in New York. I was managing a comedian by the name of Augie Smith, and Augie was doing...
Augie, my son.
I was doing live at Gotham. So Judy Brown Marmel, who's Levity Entertainment, she came up and she goes, Mark, did you hear about Richard Jenny? I go, no, what? And when she told me, I literally had to grab the wall.
Yeah.
I was that shocked,
Yeah.
But, there's been a few of them, Ken, over the years.
There are absolutely too many.
Yeah.
Too many, Mark.
Greg Giraldo, John Panette.
Think about John Panette. I think John Panette, I remember having on WJR, and John Panette came back the second time, and he goes, oh, I remember you had the beautiful buffet.
Yeah.
You had a cook in here.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. He fed me. He fed me that day.
You know what he did to me one night?
What's that?
And John's rather heavy. I was heavier at the time.
He was a massive man.
Yeah. So we're in the back.
And actually, I think he became less funny when he lost a lot of the weight.
Yeah. we're in the back hall on the way to the green room, and he goes, wait a minute. He goes, hold on. And he said, let's get a picture here. So they're lining up, and John's got his belly pushed against my belly, and he just lets one rip. He goes, take it in, Ridley, take it in. And it's just going, he goes, there's turnips in there. Take it in. So that's why you see me almost dying in this picture.
Wow. God, Mark Ridley just regaling me with these great stories. And I have so many comics I want to ask you about, but we only have so much time. Bill Engvall, I'll talk about the comics that just totally blew me away the very first time I saw him.
Yeah.
Engvall.
Yeah.
Engvall just blew me away. Unfortunately, with Tim, I got to see the progression.
Yeah.
And then when Tim got it all together, we knew he was bye-bye.
Oh, man, when you have producers coming into Detroit to sit and watch his show at the Comedy Castle, these guys were big-name producers.
Yeah.
And they're in the audience watching. I'm going, hey, this guy's really
this guy,
off. Something's happening here.
Somebody said, this we've got a sitcom.
We've got a
here.
winner.
And by the way, kudos to Tim and the entire crew of Last Man Standing.
Yeah.
After 2 weeks, they're just crushing it.
Well, I promoted him last year at the Royal Oak Theater, and that was a treat. And then a month after that, and last October, he and Leno came in to do a segment of Jay Leno's Garage. They did. Yes. And then they came to the club.
I was pissed off about that because you got to go, and he was like, "Well, I was only in for a half a day."
Well, what was funny is that they didn't use any of my footage, and I know I did well, but but they pulled up in this old
Don't
Chrysler.
You hate that when you're on the floor, man?
So they pull up in front of the club, and they get out, and Tim and Jay are talking, and Jay's asking me questions, and they said, "Okay, now we're going to do a cover shot. It'll do like the same thing like you were talking before, but the mics are going to be dead." So Jay gets out. I come out of the Comedy Castle, and Jay's just going, so expletive, and I'm swearing back at him.
Never lose your act. Never lose your act.
No, he's swearing at me, and I'm swearing back at him, and Tim's going, this is what I wish we could put out.
Didn't they race a couple of Model Ts or something down
M1? Yeah. They asked me to go and be the starter for that, and I couldn't make it out that time.
To be the starter? Come on.
Yeah.
Gee, thanks, guys.
Maybe I think I would have been on the floor of that one too.
I'm a flower in the play. Jeez. Bill Engvall was one that comes to mind. That was very. Craig Shoemaker is another one who I thought had quit. He had retired. He had a radio show.
Yeah,
and now I see he's coming back to your place.
Right.
So is he still traveling with the Love Master?
He's still doing the Love Master and still bringing the people in. He's good. And you know what's really good?
He's a good guy.
He is very good.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
In fact, he's another one who's approached my son about having him produce a show for him. So, it's like a lot of crossover. But it's interesting with Kathleen and with Craig. Even though they have their fan base that goes back 20 years, they're getting new fans coming in to see them, which is really great.
That's what I was trying to say. Because, for example, in our case with my family, it'll be 3 generations.
Right.
3 generations, all not only waiting to go see Kathleen Madigan, because some of the younger kids saw her for the first time last year.
Right.
And we're like, oh, I'm back.
Well, and that brings me up to, and if I may jump in as to why we're also talking here on, January 4th is my 40th year in business.
Really?
And I really wanted somebody special. I wanted Dave Coulier, but Dave is so busy now with producing or directing actually, and only doing a college once in a while. So my wife, she goes, what about the guy who plays Zach Galifianakis? She can't remember his name. Zach Galifianakis. She goes, yeah, that guy plays his mother. And I go, oh, yeah, Louis Anderson.
Yeah.
And so Louis asked me 3 years ago if he could ever play the club. He'd love to come in and play. And I said, hey, Louis, Mark, I'd love to have you.
Hey, Mark.
I've got his voicemail on my phone, but unfortunately he gives out his phone number. But anyway, so an agent called me, and we're lining up 2019. He said, by the way, we just signed Louis Anderson. I said, do me a favor. Talk to his manager. I know his manager, and talk to Louis if you have to. But Louis said he wanted to play the club, and I'd love to have him be part of the 40th anniversary. Well, I get a call about a week later and said Louis wants to do it. And I said, wonderful. And it's a great arrangement, great terms and everything else. If you look on his schedule, I'm the only comedy club he's doing. Everything else is theaters and casinos.
Really?
And so he's coming in to help celebrate the 40th anniversary. And then
Wow.
David Koechner is next week after Louis. He's the one who played Champ Kind in Anchorman,
Yep.
Ron Burgundy.
Wow.
I've got some good names coming in, Ken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It seems that comedy's kind of going through a renaissance.
Yeah.
You've seen the highs and the lows of it.
Oh, yeah.
So, I
Definitely.
mean, I don't necessarily want to spend all this time talking about my favorite memories. It's all about your favorite memories. But I selfishly just, there was a period, and there still is, I mean, I just absolutely love comedians.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I still think there's such a perfect marriage between radio and comedy. And I have Fred Jacobs, media giant, coming on the air with me Tuesday.
Excellent.
And I'm gonna push him hard on a couple of things because he's one of these guys that less is more. Get back to the music.
Yeah.
Music is the hallmark of the radio
Yeah.
station.
Yeah.
I'll never forget Mort Krim once told me about a consultant. A consultant is a guy that'll borrow your watch to tell you what time it is. And I always
love
thought,
that
man,
line.
is that a great line? You nailed it, pal.
Yeah.
You nailed it with that one. Shoemaker's coming back.
Yeah.
What about the chances of getting Ron White or Larry the Cable Guy or Billy Engvall or Jeff Foxworthy?
I think, and I see these guys I don't see them all the time. When I'm down in Florida, I'm on Longboat Key for the winter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go into like the Van Wezel and see Louis Black last year. And we get together down in the dressing room. If I get to see them, it's usually in their setting. If they're coming by, you know what it's like. I mean, Ken, these guys, they're on a circuit. Like Kathleen, if she's not doing my club, she's in one city one night, on a plane the next day. That night, she's in another city. You know, it's tough for them to come down and do a club.
When's enough though in terms of money? I mean, or is it just love, passion for?
Oh, you talk to Louis, he's still passionate about his job.
Oh, God.
He loves it.
Yeah.
So is Kathleen. I think Kathleen has said, she tells me, she said, when you tell me that you're going to retire, which I'm not, I'm getting ready to do another 5-year lease in Royal Oak.
Good for you. Well, I hope so, yeah.
Yeah, and she said, when you retire, she goes, I'm going to book a date the day before your retirement. I go, oh, great. And then she goes, I'm going to call you up 2 days before and cancel on you. I said, Kathleen, you would have every right to do that. I'm not making you come back, but she loves the Detroit area so much that she loves coming back here.
You know what? Binder said I can't get the Binder interview out of my head because of the fact that he said so many really curious things. And I was talking to him. He was talking about bravery in comedy.
Yeah.
And he said that he took a shot, basically, at Kimmel and Fallon and Colbert.
Yeah.
Well, he took a shot at all the late night guys.
Right.
Playing to their audience.
Sure.
Bashing on politics.
Right.
Knowing exactly what the sweet spot is.
Mm-hmm.
What the popular area is. What the popular joke is.
Right.
And Binder was really railing against that.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you have a comedy club, do you know or do you have an idea that this comedian is going to be going political on me at some point during his act?
Not at all.
Really?
I just had T.J. Miller, who came through the Chicago comedy scene with my son Ryan at the same time. They were both doing stand-up there. But then T.J. just shoots up with Silicon Valley, She's Out of My League, Deadpool. We did 3 sold-out shows on a Sunday, and he had a small segment that was political.
Yeah.
And that was fine. It didn't. There was nothing that you had to go, ooh.
Yeah.
If someone is that offended, if you're saying something about this candidate or this party, that party, then you shouldn't even be in the comedy club.
Right.
You know, to me, that's a safe area for whatever goes. I mean, I do have boundaries.
Yeah.
I mean, extreme racism.
Right.
That's a hot button. I'm not going to.
Totally agree.
I don't tolerate that. In fact, I had one night where I turned off the lights and the sound on a comedian because they were going off. And then I opened the door and kind of said, "Come on, let's go."
No kidding.
Kicked them off stage. Yeah.
No kidding.
So it can be, but when you get in, we have a disclaimer, a poster at the front door. These comedians are independent contractors. What's said does not necessarily reflect the views, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for having to have that.
Yeah.
But when Bobby Slayton is going off on one of his tirades and somebody gets up and wants
The
to
pit
fight
bull
him,
of comedy.
God, have a good time. This is a safe haven to laugh.
As I said to Binder, I said, a lot of comics, or a lot of people in the audience, rather, just want comedy to be Calgon and take them away.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
I just want to get away from my shit.
When the times were bad, Ken, back in 2008, when the market was crashing, I remember somebody asked me the same thing, and I said, look, I've got two things that people really want and need.
Yeah.
And they said, what's that? I said, alcohol and comedy. So, I've got it. They need it.
Well, and you also have a great wait staff.
Yeah,
a great staff.
I have
there,
one of the best. Mary, who's been with me since 1985, my general
Yeah.
manager, she said, you can't retire yet. And I go, come on. And she goes, nope, my house isn't paid off yet.
You know, fast, almost an hour has gone by.
Is it really?
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm not making this shit
Well,
up, man.
we'll
I'm
do
telling
a
you
part
the truth.
2 sometime.
Well, you're the third one to say that.
When I can name names.
We can do that, but I wanted to ask you that I'm working alongside a guy who helps me out a lot with my social media stuff.
Nate, yeah.
Nate Armbruster. Let's give Nader a little plug. And
Great guy.
You've got Nader working in your club right now.
Yeah.
And he'll probably kill me for saying Nader because I always have to assign a nickname to somebody. Young comic. Man, I'm telling you, I'm watching this guy.
Yeah.
Same sort of deal. Same sort of, exactly like Dave and Mike and Tim. And I rely on those names, folks, because those are the guys in my rat pack that I grew up with.
Right.
You know, I can tell you for a fact that I was the first guy to ever hire Dave Coulier at WABX doing production for us. Right. He did Bullwinkle and Popeye and all these other voices. And Theo in the production department said, I just want one thing, Dave. Stop talking like Bullwinkle. So anyway, that's why I mentioned their names so often. Young comics now, do they have it? Do they have that same it that they had?
Yeah.
Or am I being selfish with
my
generation?
I've got to tell you, there was one. Well, I used to manage 7 comedians.
Yeah.
And J. Chris Newberg from Birmingham went out to Los Angeles. He's now a producer. He's traveling with Russell Peters all around the world with him as his opening act.
Very funny guy.
Great writer. Has done a lot of TV. Dave Landau has done Live at Gotham. He's from the area, and he's on the Anthony Commando's show. Whatever. I can't remember.
I thought you managed Teflon at one time.
Nope, not Heffron, but Augie Smith and David Dyer over in Grand Rapids who does morning radio. So I mean, I've seen guys that do open mic, and I'll watch. There's a young guy by the name of Mark Habib, who I love him. He just does. He has the it thing when he comes off stage, and I see people going, "Whoa," you know. He's talking about his background being an Arab and what the Arab society thinks and things like that, his mother, and it's just funny as heck. I've seen a lot of guys do that, but he can really zero in and do it right.
Do you still get some guys, the opening guys, the openers and the features, they're still getting their chops, don't you think? Especially
absolutely.
the openers. But the features are still trying to find their spot.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, they might be able to headline a small room somewhere, but, if I put them in front of 400, I've had guys say, there's 400 people in here, isn't there? I go, yeah. And they go, oh, my God.
I can't do it.
I can't do it.
I'm not going out. I'm not going out there.
But it is fun to watch open mic, and I'm not always around to watch it live, but I can watch it. It's recorded every single night, and I can watch the shows at my convenience. And it's fun while I'll be watching somebody. All of a sudden, I find myself laughing and going, hey, there's something there. And then I call the club and I say, make sure that guy's on again real soon, or that woman's on again real soon.
So I'm trying to think of if you were to offer advice to somebody that thinks they can do it.
Right.
I mean, give me the basic starting point.
Don't be afraid. And Jerry Seinfeld has said the same thing. No matter what, discipline yourself to write every single day, 7 days a week.
Oh, okay.
Don't be afraid to sit down and write 5 or 10 pages of stuff, because eventually it's gonna come around where you go. If you've seen the Jerry Seinfeld show with a special on Netflix, where they have all of his material he's ever written on a street, or copies of this material, and the street just goes on forever. And
really?
Everything he's written in the 40 some odd years he's been doing comedy. Yeah. Don't be afraid to write.
Well, I find that fascinating because I think of funny things. I actually am capable of, I think, writing or putting down or having a funny idea.
Yeah.
And I probably, here I am in my 60s now. Yeah. Maybe I just learned a very, very wise lesson from Mark Ridley. So write it down.
Absolutely.
What about that first time you get out in front of a crowd? What do you tell yourself? Just settle down and
Just go
do it.
You've got the microphone, you've got the stage, and you're in control.
Yeah.
There might be people you don't know out there, and it is. Public speaking is one of the greatest fears of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, first time I did it, I needed a diaper,
Yeah.
It just had bad.
Yeah, I needed more than a diaper.
But it can be frightening, but again, you're in control. You have the
Ken's
microphone.
got a big ass. Well, that's because he's wearing a Depend and a diaper.
And thank God they make those for golfers. Never have to leave the course.
He's wearing the NASA pants.
Monty Clark pants.
All right, so we took a sidebar there.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you something, just as a guy that's gone out to just sort of like welcome people to the show.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming.
It is.
It's overwhelming.
It is.
Because you really can't see the crowd that well.
Yeah.
My dad once told me a long time ago when I was a kid that he used to have to give little speeches, he's an AC spark plug.
Right.
And he'd see these dealers at a convention. And he said, pick 3 spots in the room and look just over the eyes.
Right.
And
Right.
look at the top of their heads.
Yeah.
Pick 3 people, and every single person in the room will think you're looking right at them.
That's very smart.
Isn't
That's
that
very
great?
good.
Yeah, I mean, you just sort of, but look above their heads. Don't make the eye contact.
Yeah.
And that'll
That's great. Yeah. that'll
let
calm
you
down.
exhale a little bit.
Well, Tim, I've been with Tim backstage, and even after hundreds and hundreds of performances, he still paces back and forth like it's his first time. Tim Allen.
I know, yeah.
His first time on stage. I've played to a
Well,
crowd.
as somebody once said, if you don't get nervous,
Yeah.
then something's wrong. Yeah.
I remember emceeing a show for 4 people. We had 4 people come in a blizzard, and we said the show must go on. We did 4 people. And we
Really?
we did a full show for them. And then being in front of a full crowd at the Fox Theater as an MC. And to me, they're one and the same. Just you're nervous because you're playing to 4 people, and
Yeah.
you're nervous because you're playing to 5,000. Just have fun doing it, pal.
Well, in a room filled with 4, you get one bad guy, one bad apple.
I kicked him right out. We played to 3 that night.
What was the name of your bouncer? What's his name?
It was Bill. He wasn't back. I was back at the old
Bill,
Stafford.
get him out of here.
Get him out of here.
Get him out of here. Give him the shovel. Help him down the stairs. Get him out of here.
If I can make one person laugh, well, that's all in your crowd.
Final question for you. Business is good. You're happy still doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Do you find that a lot of comics are not necessarily that funny in real life, but rather only funny on stage?
I think one thing that it's hard now because when I show up at the club, and I don't want to sound pompous, but the comedians are kind of intimidated that I'm in the room. Oh. So I don't really know them that well.
That's well deserved.
And I go, some guys will call me Mr. Ridley. I go, that was my father. Come on, let's have some fun here, you know. But the guys that I know fairly well, they're funny. They're funny off stage. But for the most part, they're quipped. They're quick, with an ad lib or something like that. If I haven't seen somebody in a year, it's good, and we'll play catch up. And just that dinner, like with Louie and with Kathleen, we had a lot of fun. I mean, the jokes were flying around the table that night. So.
I remember one time having dinner out in Reno.
Yeah.
With Diane Ford.
Yeah.
And Bobby Slayton.
Yeah.
And that was probably the hardest I've ever laughed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Slayton just took over.
He did.
He took over, and Diane Ford would push his buttons, and it was so much fun to watch.
Wow.
That it was like, but he was on. He never stopped.
You know who I see every winter?
Does he ever come into town?
Bobby was scheduled last year for New Year's or Super Bowl weekend, had to cancel because he got a bigger job. I understood it. Believe me, a lot more cash than I was paying him. I said, let's do it again 2018. He never called me, or 2019. He didn't call me for 2019, and I'm all booked for 2019.
Jeez.
I have the New Year's act going into 2020. But I got to tell you real quickly who I see, and I talk to him a lot, is Dick Smothers from the Smothers Brothers.
Is that right?
Yeah, he hangs out at the McCurdy's Comedy Theater down in Florida, and I go there a lot because Les and I are buddies and play a lot of golf together. But Dick is one of those guys that's very reserved, very quiet off stage, and then I saw him do stand-up by himself, and he said, Mark, the greatest temptation is to turn to my brother who's not there when I'm doing stand-up by myself.
Right.
So it's interesting, yeah.
God, you're a great storyteller.
Oh,
All
thanks.
of you guys are.
Thanks.
your son's doing well. Tell people what your son's doing.
Oh, both my sons. I have
Yeah.
two sons. One was the younger one. Adam was a producer and director for Last Chance U on Netflix. 3 seasons of that.
Sure.
And, the Billy Joel Last Play at Shea. They currently just finished doing a tour of Europe with Kevin Hart, doing a new documentary on him.
Huh.
And Ryan, the older one, was co-executive producer and head writer for Rick and Morty.
Boy, does he remind me of you when he talks.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And then
Same eyes,
he won
too.
an Emmy,
Yeah.
and he won an Annie Award, which is like the Emmys for animation for Best Written Episode. Now he's working with Robert Kirkman for a new series on Amazon. Kirkman created Walking Dead, and he's writing a movie for Illumination Studios. He did The Minions, Despicable Me, so they're both doing very, very well.
The apples do not fall far from the tree.
In that business, I'm so happy for both of them.
Well,
Trust
you've
me.
always had a great set of apples, let me tell you, my friend.
Those apples are full,
Oh,
big.
I'll tell you what. Everybody wanted apples like Ridley's. Everybody.
Oh, boy.
Thanks.
Hey, thank you.
It was really a lot of fun.
Great catching up with you, Ken.
I mean,
Seriously.
and by the way, if you want to know seriously, you're the leader in the clubhouse in terms of time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All
So
right.
and I don't have to do much. I'm not going to. I may have to cut that out because people hate to hear some guy flumming up near the end of a podcast.
Or it's like the size of some guy's apples.
That's right. Boy, I'll tell you, Ridley's got. Now, you know what, Tim Allen? We'd go into the kitchen, and he would say that over and over. And I really like Mark's apples.
Yeah.
Damn, those are nice apples. Good God, those are great
And you
apples.
serve a mean bottle of water, Ken. I love this
Well,
water.
there's more where that came from. All right, and I got some red wine, too. It's after 12. Hell, it's 1:20.
I still got to work tonight, pal. Or show up at the club, whatever you want to
Yeah,
call
well,
it.
that's all you got to do is show up. Don't worry about it. Because they'll call you Mr. Ridley
Yes,
either way.
exactly.
All right, thanks, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Ken Calvert along with Mark Ridley on the Ken Calvert Show podcast. We'll see you next time. Bye, Mark.
Bye, Ken. See ya. I'm walking out the door.
All right, I can stop now.
Okay.
You can subscribe to the Ken Calvert Show podcast on Apple iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. It's also available by going directly to www.thekencalvertshow.com. You can reach Ken at kencalvertpodcast@gmail.com. The preceding program is the property of Ken Calvert and may not be rebroadcast without the written permission of Ken Calvert.